Welcome back to Why Are We Here? I'm your host, Spencer Crandall. In today's episode, we chat with my good buddy, Josh Radnor. You might know him from How I Met Your Mother. I know him as just a complete renaissance man. He does everything. He's movies, plays. He now does music, and it's incredible. Check it out on his Spotify, Josh Radnor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen. Today's episode is super fun. Make sure that you like and subscribe and get into it. Why are we here?
Yo, yo.
Yo to the yo.
How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. How you doing?
I'm okay. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late.
How dare you?
How
dare you? Letting the dog out, huh?
You away?
You let the dog out, right? You got a new puppy.
I did. He's coming up on 10 months.
That's a puppy.
Yeah.
Dude.
He's the best, though.
What's his name? Nelson?
Nelson, yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
You mind if we just hop straight in the interview, or?
Oh, no, please.
Awesome, man. I feel like I haven't seen you in the flesh, in the real life, since like pre-COVID. It's been a long time since you were in Nashville.
I was in Nashville December 2019.
Mm-hmm. Like right before the world just went to shit.
Fest. Yeah, we had no idea the tidal wave that was on its way.
Yeah, man. I just launched this podcast, so thank you for being like one of my first guests. It's super fun. It's called Why Are We Here? And it's kind of answering the same question in a couple different ways. So like the first, why are we here? I thought I'd start just like giving people watching or listening some context of like why I'm having you on, because I think it's a great place to start. So obviously I was aware of you via something like How I Met Your Mother. Then I heard you on Rob Bell's podcast, because I'm a huge Rob Bell fan.
Yeah.
Which I love him very much. And you did like the quoting with Josh Radnor on there. And I listened to that episode, and I was like, this guy is cut from the same cloth as me. I love all these things that they're talking about, and this is awesome. I think I heard you on the Pete Holmes podcast as well. And I think I messaged you. And
you know what I think you did? I think you did an Instagram story where you tagged me and said that you keep listening to it, or you go back to it. Yeah,
which I really do. Like, it's such a good episode. It just like has all these nuggets of truth and wisdom. So every once in a while I'll be playing like Mario Kart in the morning. I'm like, you know what I need? I need to start my day with some quotes.
Yeah. Well, I was like, who is this? And I looked at you and I saw that you were a singer, and then I checked out a couple of your songs, and I loved the vibe of your music and your voice. And then one of us DM'd the other. I don't remember who. Mm-hmm. But I was coming to Nashville in like a week.
Yeah, what are the odds, right?
I was like, do you happen to live in Nashville? And you said, I do.
Yeah.
And then somehow it became, well, let's get together and grab a meal and maybe try to write a song. And we ended up writing 2.
Yeah, and they're awesome too. I love those songs. Jeff is a huge fan of. We wrote a song called Same Room. My manager, Jeff's in the room, and he's always like.
Can I say on the record that I ever so slightly prefer Goodbye Again, which I want you to also do.
I know. They're both great. And it was fun to write songs with you, because I feel like we almost come from the same world and separate worlds in a lot of ways, where like I am a little bit more of like the pop country. You're a little bit more of, correct me if I'm wrong, like kind of like a indie folk, bluegrass Americana world. Sure. So like we kind of came up with just a little bit different of a vibe than I usually get, which is so fun and just different.
Yeah. And it's funny now that I've done you were one of my early kind of co-writes, like without Ben Lee, who I initially started writing Lee with. So my whole songwriting career was born out of co-writes, right? Like now I of course write songs of my own, but there is a kick to writing with another person, because it's two minds and spirits and souls kind of like having a conversation or doing some dance. And the thing I really like about co-writes is by the time the listener hears the song that 2 people wrote, you've haggled over each line. You've both agreed upon each line. They've been like double-vetted, you know?
Yeah. It's the best.
There's something cool about it. And there was something like you were bringing a lot of musicianship to it. Like I remember you working just the bridge for Goodbye Again. Like I remember you showing me a couple things that I then stole as a songwriter, you know,
Yeah, man, that's the best part of the co-write is every time you go in with somebody, you get to steal all their best little nuggets. When somebody's like, "Oh, have you ever done this with a hook?" or "Have you ever thought about this for a second verse?" You're like, "I love that. That's so nice."
Oh, I know.
So
I
helpful.
think that whole musician thing is just like, where can I steal the next thing from,
Yeah,
and just put it
exactly.
in my toolkit, you know?
Yeah, I think Willie Nelson is like pretty famous for saying like something along the lines of good songwriters borrow, great songwriters steal. And it's so real, like not that you should take anybody's intellectual property, but that you should steal from, the actions and the processes and ideologies of people who are doing things that you want to do or things that you're like, whoa, that's clever. I've never heard it that way. That's a great place to start. And I think we all start in our room kind of like nervously writing, like you're almost looking around like over your shoulder, like, is anybody going to hear this? Should I let anybody hear this?
And I also don't know how you start doing anything. The only way I know how to start doing anything is to try to imitate people I love who do it.
100%.
And then your own voice starts to come through, Like, I
Mm.
think we all probably have those gateway drug musicians who are like, no, I saw them in a concert. I was blown away. I picked up a guitar. That's the whole vibe I'm going for, just because I was spellbound by whatever that was. And I don't think it's a bad idea to write, not quite parody songs, but like, if Damien Rice was sitting here or took over my body, like, what would it sound like?
Yeah, absolutely. Who were those people for you?
I mean, it was Damien. It was Damien.
Right?
I went through a really hard breakup in my late 20s, and it was right around the time I discovered Damien Rice, and it was before his record O, which I think is still like a masterpiece. His first record was released in America, but I had seen him at the Troubadour in LA, and then I saw him at the Mercury Lounge in New York, and then at another place called North Six in Brooklyn the next night, and I saw him like 8 times in a year or two, just like
Nice.
wherever he was, I would find a way to go see him. And he played with this gal, Lisa Hannigan, and he had a cello player on stage. And there was something about the combination of like acoustics and strings that I really loved, the female vocalist accompanying him, and his just general kind of way he just cast a spell. If you've ever seen him play live, I thought it was, I just, there was something about where I was emotionally in that moment that his music
Yeah.
felt like the only thing, not only that I wanted to hear, that I could hear. Like I couldn't,
Yeah.
and if you're so deep on a record, you're like, that's what I
100%.
can't listen to right now.
Oh yeah, there's this like repeatability that happens when somebody is just nailing the way that you feel, like sonically, lyrically, and you listen to other things. It's like I can't even wear that, like an itchy sweater. It just doesn't fit me right now. Like there's one thing that I can put on, and it is this album or this song. It's so real. So
And then I went to I remember at the Virgin Megastore on Union Square in New York. I found the import, and I paid like $35 or something because it was like this import. It wasn't a domestic release.
sure.
And I just played that thing. Anyone who was in my life at that time grew to love the record because they had no choice. It was like that was all I was listening to.
Yeah.
And then the movie Closer came out with Jude Law and Natalie Portman and Clive Owen and Julia Roberts, and Mike Nichols used a bunch of those songs.
Oh really? That's awesome.
He got wildly famous after that. And I remember, when you feel like you scooped something and it's kind of
Yeah, that's such a fun feeling.
and then it's like they tip because it's good.
Yep.
And then you're like, then it suddenly belongs to everyone. And I felt a little bit like betrayed by him. Like,
Yeah,
I was
it's
like,
such a funny feeling as a human. You're like, you were mine. Now
Yeah.
you're everybody's. Like, there's a couple people. My little sister was super on to Billie Eilish super early. And
Yeah.
we kind of were always like, oh, she's going to be huge. Now she's huge. And we're like, she's everybody's. Like, which
Yeah.
is amazing. And that's exactly what we wanted for her. But it's this weird mind thing of like, she was ours. She was our baby. We found her first.
That like a brother and sister discover Billie Eilish because she's such a brother sister
Oh, yeah.
act.
Yeah, and she's like one of the most interesting music stories of all time as such
Did
a
you
young human.
Doc?
I haven't yet, and I think it's because I'm saving it for my sister. I'm gonna watch it with her.
Watching, yeah.
Yeah, but just fascinating how they're making everything in one bedroom, 2 people, and they're just kind of prodigies. I'm super excited to see kind of where they go with everything. It's pretty wild.
I like the new tune. I listened to it the other night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I feel like back to the Rob podcast and kind of how we met. We're gonna get back into some of the music stuff here in a minute, but I wanted to just go back to the beginning and like the why are we here, and I wanted to actually read you my favorite quotes of the episode because they're the ones that every time I hear them, they like just get me. So I'm so glad that you read them on that podcast. I'm going to, as the great Pete Holmes says, put this quarter in your jukebox, see what happens, see what comes out. So, know, O beloved, that man was not created in jest or at random, but marvelously made and for some great end. Al-Ghazali.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget where I read that. He's a Sufi poet or philosopher, or I don't know. I don't know if he's a poet exactly. I mean, all the Sufis are incredibly poetic, but it was, I think it was an article I read about a female Sufi scholar, and she quoted that. She didn't attribute to him, but she said, as we say, no, O beloved, man was not created in jest or at random, but marvelously made it for some great end. There's something about that quote that one of the scariest things for me is meaninglessness.
Yeah.
Nihilism. That we're here for no reason. It's an accident, which I have a hard time believing.
Sure.
Just at my core, it feels way more improbable that this is all accidental than it does.
I feel the same way. Correct.
Thing, or I don't know what to call the thing, but just some
whatever it is, yeah.
Source energy, some love, some timeless, eternal thing. And that quote just speaks to it. And I find it, everything about it is so beautiful. It's so tender, right? Like he says, no, oh beloved, like he's calling us.
That's what I loved about it. That was my note on it, is it feels like the eternal light being thing is just sitting with you. He's like, oh, you thing, you're trying so hard. Yeah. But I understand you. I know you.
And it's also saying, don't worry, like you're here for a reason. Man was not, this is not a joke, and this is not random, but you were, what is it? No, O beloved, man was not created in jest or at random.
But marvelously made and for some great end.
And for some great end. So your source, your how you were made is perfect, and there's a reason, and there's a point to it, you know? And, there's a translation of the Bhagavad Gita that I forget where I read it, but it described it as a love letter from God to his friend man.
That's so nice.
I love that idea because I as I'm getting older, I don't like hierarchies.
Sure.
I don't like God, the supreme king to which we supplicate, and there's something so lovely about and the Sufis and other poets when they get into a kind of divine ecstasy. There's a lot of Christian mystical poets that they speak of God as lover. You know, Richard Rohr says this, that all the great, you know, poets, saints, sages, when they meet God in the state of the deepest ecstasy, they always meet a lover, not a dictator. Yeah. So anything that speaks of God as like, you know, this punishing lightning bolt, Zeus kind of God on high. Right. It doesn't resonate with me anymore. But
that's always when my flag goes off. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. But when there's something more tender-hearted and intimate, that's when I feel closer to whatever that thing is. And that quote, more than any other quote I know, is the quote that puts me in that heart space.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And I actually listened back this morning because I'm like, I'm going to find my top 3 from this and just kind of bring it up so that I can add as much value to other people as it has to me. And the word that it makes me think of is release. Because sometimes I feel in my like unhealth, it is nihilism. It's like, why are we even here? What's the purpose of this? And that's kind of why I wanted to start this podcast, because I want to talk to smarter people or people who have different opinions than me, or so we can talk about it. When I talk about it with other people, I don't feel so alone. I don't feel so purposeless. And this just made me go, like literally physically exhale and go like, oh yeah, it's the beloved. It's my friend. Like it's not out to get me. There is a purpose. It was just beautiful. I love that one.
There's also something, you know, I've written about this and I've talked with Rob about this. Like I'm very spiritually omnivorous. You know, I was raised Jewish, but I've gotten so much from Christian thinkers, from Buddhist thinkers, from Sufi thinkers, that they're just Hinduism. It just feels to me, and this is another thing Richard Rohr says. I probably quote him more than anyone, but he says, if it's true, it's true. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think there's certain sects of, say, Christianity. I know Judaism has its own kind of gatekeepers around what is acceptable to take in as philosophy. Sure. But the idea that you can't learn, that a Sufi thinker can't carry the frequency of divine truth is like ridiculous to say that that's not true. You know, that I don't think like a true a Christian should be able to hear that quote and have it open their heart, because
Yeah.
there's nothing in it that should brush up against your beliefs.
Yeah, especially when it's actually saying the same thing, just maybe not attributing the same author or choosing the same path on the same mountain, if you will. Like yeah, I feel the same way. I'm gonna read you one more because I love this one, and it's a reminder to myself. The quote from Robert Anton Wilson: "You are precisely as big as what you love, and precisely as small as what you allow to annoy you."
Yeah. Yeah. Robert Anton Wilson's a really interesting character. I read a book of his called Prometheus Unbound. He's written some really strange books. He was a sci-fi writer. He was just like a weird 20th century psychedelic character. He was
Nice.
he was kind of like a trickster philosopher, you know?
Okay.
He was like, he believed that, you know, he used to say belief is the death of intelligence. Like he really wanted people to stay in the mystery. And you are precisely as big as what you love, and precisely as small as what you allow to annoy you. There was just something I loved about that, because it was like, we also again know the truth of that, like our love is boundaryless, right? So it could be infinite and endless, right? So as big as we can love, that's as big as we are. And the annoyance and resentment and grievance and all these other things, they're what close the walls in on us.
Yeah.
They're what define, they're what make, you know, the borders and boundaries of our lives and our minds and our hearts. Like it shrinks things.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think in this,
And I also love, he doesn't say you're precisely as small as what you hate.
correct.
He says you're precisely as small as what you allow to annoy you.
Yeah, I love the verbiage of that, because it's
know.
allow, and that's the difference between like pain and suffering, right? Like pain is what, you know, happened, and then suffering is you're going back to that same well and like drinking
That's a
that
kind of
same
Buddhist
thing.
Pain is optional. Suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's also saying that we do kind of have a choice in which way to define ourselves. We can define ourselves by, you know, like I always see people on the internet, especially nowadays, they're like, I hate this, this annoys me, this is the worst, this is a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, okay, what do you love? Like, why spend that effort and energy on something to tear it down when you could point that light at something and build it up? That just seems like such a better use of our time and effort. And this quote was just kind of that said so poetically and swiftly. I love that.
Yeah. It's a big thing with social media, especially Twitter. I find is like, what is today? What are we going to be outraged by?
Yeah. What is the thing that we will be allowed to allow ourselves to be annoyed by?
Totally. And it even feels like more than annoyance. It's this is the end of the world. Today, this is what's pointing to the end of the world. And I mean that on all sides of anything, you know. And I'm a politically progressive person, and I have to step away a lot because I'm like, I don't want to be at war today, just for today.
Yeah.
I don't want to be at war. And I do find, and look, these are all, you know, multinational corporations that are ethically compromised, but I find Instagram to be a sweeter neighborhood. It does feel like there's more, this is what I'm celebrating today. And a lot of times it's self-aggrandizing and egoic and whatever.
Correct.
But there does feel like there's somewhat more of an invitation, like you're allowed to celebrate something on here.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel a little weird going on Twitter and saying, I've got good news. You know,
Right.
It's a little different. Yeah.
I feel like Twitter is like the water cooler of society. We go there to talk about things, and Instagram is like the slideshow of our trip on our phones that we're showing everybody. Like, look, it's so fun. And so they both have their pros and cons. Like Twitter can also give a voice to the voiceless, and Instagram can also be a toxic place where somebody develops an eating disorder because of the people they follow and their algorithm. So
Absolutely.
each one of them has health and unhealth.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm going to get some water, but I'm still with you.
Oh yeah, do your thing, do your thing. Why are you getting some water? Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Why am I getting water?
Oh no, as you're getting water. I understand biologically why you need water. But I'm going to read you one more quote because I really love this one. And I had heard it said a couple times before, but I feel like this is a really great way to say it. And I actually can't find who it's attributed to. And in the Rob podcast, I feel like you guys said like 4 different people. So I'll let you correct me if need
Yeah.
be. We should have 2 pockets. In one pocket is I am ashes to ashes and dust to dust. And in the other pocket is the world was created for me and me alone.
Yeah, it's actually I don't know what rabbi said that, but it is from the Talmud. I think it's a Jewish quote, and it's from it's not from the Torah. It's from like the copious amounts of commentary later.
Okay,
but it was a famous rabbi who said that, and I like it because it's paradox. It's saying you're here and then you're going to be gone, and also this is all for you. This is all for you.
It's so fun.
It's beautiful to contemplate both those things. And they're both true, I mean, one of the things I find difficult about discourse in modern society is everyone's so dug in around a point that if everyone just was able to soften both at an argument. Now, look, there's certain things that are like, Harvey Weinstein's a criminal, he belongs in jail. Like, there's certain things I'm not willing to argue.
Correct.
But there are other issues that people are really up in arms about that are more nuanced than we're making them seem.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something, this is the big thing I got in college, was that something can be true and not true all at the same time.
Yep.
Just like being able to hold the mystery of, I had a teacher who was Spanish, and you'd ask him a question, and he always had this response that would make us laugh. He would say, "Sí y no." It's like yes and no. Like, sure. And it's true. It's like I don't know. Like it's not. Everything is just a little more dimensionally complicated and almost like headache-inducingly complicated, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll read something, and the force of it, the rhetorical force of it, I'll be like, yes, that is undeniably true. And then you read a comment, or a lot of comments are garbage, but every once in a while you'll read a comment or a reply.
Sure.
And someone will say, I hear you, but, and then you'll go, you know what? That's a pretty good point.
Damn, you're right.
that's also a good point.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that I am not a politician is because I have this kind of mind. Like and that's not to say all politicians are single-minded or simple-minded, but I do think it serves you in a kind of advocacy sense to take a position and ride it to death. Whereas I'm a little more philosophical about things.
Well, and this is where, politically it's so tough because most people I talk to actually hold this kind of middle place of like, yeah, I get like we all kind of have the same solution in mind, and like both things can work, or that thing can work in health, or that thing could work with some more funding. But to be a politician is to put on the jersey, red, blue. I believe this in totality, because for some reason, somewhere along the way, unfortunately, it was a sign of weakness to say, I don't know. Or, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of everything, which is just such a shame.
And you're a little younger than me, but I remember when John Kerry was running for president against George W. Bush, the whole thing, he changed his position on like a couple things because he had more information, and they called him a flip-flopper, and they held up flip-flops at the convention going flip-flop, flip-flop, that he wouldn't ride it over the cliff.
Well, as if that's a horrible thing to do in life, is like, I was presented with new information. I try to hold this as a belief, if I hold any beliefs, which is show me some new stuff and I can believe new things if it's true. That should be a thing that we celebrate. Like, Obama famously didn't run as like a pro-gay marriage candidate, flip-flopped sides. I'm super glad that he's a flip-flopper.
Totally.
And that should be the kind of thing that we're like, yeah, that's a wonderful, beautiful thing to hold.
And if a politician was running for something and they were asked at a debate or a press conference, what do you have to say about blah, blah, and they're like, you know what, I honestly don't know enough to answer that, but I'm surrounding myself with some really smart people. I'm going to do some research on that, and at the next debate we can talk about that. But right now I don't have an answer. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to pay attention to this candidate. I'd
be so turned on in that moment, like watching my TV being like, my people, finally, somebody who's willing to say, yeah, I mean, I've just never heard of that, or like, I'm kind of on both sides. I'd love to like keep an open dialogue about it.
Well, it's interesting. I do feel like a lot of musicians and artists generally,
Mm-hmm.
they would lean a little more progressive, but I feel the more notable thing about artists is they're a little more comfortable sitting in mystery.
Right.
And I've found, I don't know if we talked about this, but I found there's a couple different ways to write songs. This is like to get us back to songwriting,
Yeah.
but to you can either write as like I'm the wise expert who's maybe looking back on something, and I'm actually telling you something wise or pithy,
Right.
and then there's I'm the protagonist in the middle of something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going on.
Yep.
The two songs we wrote are more like that.
Correct.
Like they're in the struggle. The singer is the protagonist.
Yeah.
They have regret.
Mm-hmm.
They wish they could go
They've come
back.
far enough to have regret, but they haven't gone so far that it's over.
Right, and they're still in the pain of it. They don't have the mountaintop wisdom yet.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And I feel like I remember when I directed my first film called Happy Thank You More Please, I was at a production meeting, and everyone was asking me all these questions, like logistical questions. I'd never directed a film before. I didn't know the answer to any of them.
Sure.
And I started melting down. And my cinematographer, Seamus Tierney, who shot both my movies, he said to me, what's going on? And I said, I'm terrified that it's going to be a month of people asking me questions I don't know the answers to. And he said, if you know the answers to everything, there's no reason to make a film.
Right.
Make a film because you show up every day and you say, okay, we got 100 problems. We got to solve them as we go.
Yeah.
So he gave me permission to not know, and it was the greatest.
That is the best gift a friend or a mentor or somebody can give you, is like, don't not start because you feel like you don't have enough answers. Like, the point is to start and collect as you go, even as you drop or leave things behind. That's the point. You're going to fail. Any advice that I ever give to a friend who wants to get into music or somebody who wants to get into the arts, it's like, just start. Write 10 songs, and they will probably be shit.
Yeah.
But then you'll have more information about writing songs. It's a beautiful part of the arts. The tough part is to get out of, something like your ego getting in the way and being like, no, I want to be good at something immediately. I want to have success in 6 months, something like that.
Yeah, that's a killer, I mean, it's so good to have the ability to apprentice. Like it's bananas that I think, I love Billie Eilish, but I'm also like, she was fully formed at such a young age, and we're obsessed with people who are fully formed at a young age. In America, we love prodigies. We love young geniuses.
Yep.
But it takes a long time generally to get really good at something, especially in art, And I feel like there's something to be said for, I started writing songs when I was 40. That was a different path.
Dude, I love that. That's like what's so cool and why I was so drawn to you when you're like, I'm writing songs. I'm like, this is amazing. This dude is, it's like a second life. It's like this completely different path of the arts and expressing yourself. It's actually one of my bigger questions for you. Is like, as a person, kind of a Renaissance man, actor, writer, director, you've been on Broadway, you now are writing songs, you have your newsletter that you send out, like, you love to create. It's very obvious that what brings you joy and meaning in life is to tell a story and to do those things. How do you know what's a song versus what's a script idea, or what is the song at the end of the movie? Like, I feel like you have so much creative energy. How do you point it at things and not point it so sparsely over too many things that like nothing gets done? Because you've done so many things in such a short amount of time that are actually like finished products that are finished. And I think a lot of people start a script, but then they kind of fizzle out, and then they start a song and fizzle out. So how do you maybe, allocate your energy and your time?
That's a really good question. It's a really big question. I don't know exactly how to unpack it other than to say I intuitively have a sense like, so like the song we wrote, so Goodbye Again is essentially a guy is driving away from the airport. Mm-hmm. He realized he had a too hasty goodbye with his girlfriend.
Sure.
He wishes he could go back and live that moment again. Mm-hmm. So that to me is something you can go real deep on for about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, however long that song is. Could I get a movie out of that idea?
Sure.
Probably not. That could be a scene in a movie.
Right. And I guess that's kind of, and I'm not, expecting like, when you see this or you hear this, but I'm just curious into process because you have written 2 movies, and obviously a movie's such a larger endeavor than a song. I can write a song every day, and if it's not great, I just kind of throw it away. I'm sure
Right.
the amount of time it takes to write a movie, you have to have an idea that you're more than just today passionate about. Like that's kind of the beautiful part of the form that I get to play in is
Yeah.
if I like the idea today, I can hate it tomorrow. But a movie, it's a huge bummer to be on set in the 3rd act and be like, yikes, I don't love this as much or whatever. So it takes a lot more commitment. At what point of the
That's
process do
why
you feel
I
that?
think I've been gun shy about. I haven't done a movie in a while, and I've written a bunch, and I've
Mm,
gotten them in various states of almost.
sure.
And sometimes I've pulled back because I'd say, I'm not 100. My heart's not 100% in this. Or
Mm,
when I wrote this, my heart was in it, and I've grown. And so
mm.
that's when you write very personal things, you run the risk of outgrowing the thing you're writing.
Especially as somebody like you who I feel like is on that quest of self-improvement, self-growth, self-realization, spiritual journey. With that comes like kind of rapid sometimes change of like within 6 months you're like, wow, I don't carry that anymore, or like I don't relate to that anymore.
I've been going through that a little bit, and this might be late pandemic kind of languishing,
Mm.
but it's a little bit. I've been talking with my girlfriend about this idea of like, why do we do anything? Like, why? What is the point of anything? And I don't even mean it in a nihilistic way. I'm like, I don't know why I'm ambitious anymore. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like the fuel that got me acting and driven and all that stuff, which was probably childhood wounds and all that stuff,
sure.
like I need to find a new fuel source. And curiously, writing songs, because it feels so new and lights me up, and it feels like this new superpower that I got all of a sudden.
Yeah,
That's the most exciting thing. But I also feel like what you're describing is the commitment threshold is lower. Like
correct.
like a song, it's like you spend an afternoon writing one, it doesn't work out. Okay. But if you like you said, if you're directing a movie and you lose steam on it, I'm reading the Mike Nichols biography that Mark Harris wrote, which is so fantastic. And like just seeing him, his first 2 films, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Graduate, just like right out of the gate in his like 20s or early 30s, kind of legendary right away. And then he directed some movies that he was miserable doing them because he
Mm,
either took them for money or and there's so many ways to find yourself up a creek with no paddle artistically.
sure.
And I think I could actually make more if I wasn't so worried about the joy going out of it.
Mm.
Like I have been in creative projects where I'm like, I don't want to be here and I don't enjoy this. And it feels like a kind of death to me,
Yeah, it's such a terrible feeling to be doing what you love in quotes and then like not loving it because you're like, no, I love this. I know I love this, but this isn't the right fit for some reason. And sometimes I'm in a right. And what I'm trying to be better at now is from the beginning being as brutally honest as I can. Like, I just don't know if we have the idea yet because I don't want to be in hour 4 working on the bridge, banging our heads against the wall. And I'm like, do I even like this? Which just
Yeah.
happens. It's part of the process. But as
Yeah.
avoidant of that as I can be, I will be.
Yeah. One of the things that I have really tried to trust is I think there's this idea that things that are worthwhile require a ton of sweat and a ton of effort. But when something's really flowing, it's like it's not hard. And it's
Yeah.
not, you just feel like a tuning receiver to the bigger idea.
You almost can't write fast enough, that
Yeah,
feeling?
you're
Yeah.
just like having fun. Now, some songs really I have to chisel away at,
Hmm.
or I'll have a chorus, and the chorus will sit around for 6 months until
Right.
my unconscious is working on it or whatever. But I've learned to trust ease and flow and the joy that comes with that. I think it's a really great place to create from. I'm not one of those people that like needs to go through like a hard time. Like I don't actually create well when I'm like a little down.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I actually feel unable to like reach the source. I think some people feel like the lower they go or the sadder they are, the more
Yeah.
tapped in. I've
I
never
have
related to that.
a great songwriter, and she was like, "I need to get my heart broken so I can write my next album." Like I would never say that.
Yeah, same. Which I feel lucky about. I think that's, for longevity's sake, maybe a slightly healthier And maybe that's just my opinion of it. But I do think that over time, like being sad is not necessarily something that I want to try to get to, or like, ooh, I can't wait till I get there. Although it is a great place sometimes artistically. That's the tough part about the arts.
Be avoided or discounted because a lot of information is available in grief.
Mm.
But did you read Big Magic, the Liz Gilbert book?
Mm-mm.
It's really worth reading if you're interested in like creating from a joyful place. It's worth reading.
That's all I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Also, her TED Talk on creativity is one of the greatest things about. She's like, I love this thing, and we're all kind of damaged by the idea of like the tortured genius.
Yeah.
And she really decimates that idea, and I find it very inspiring because I love making things, and I love collaborating on things with people. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you're not having fun doing that, just put on a tie and go to work in an office. Like,
sure.
Like we get this job where we don't have to like work under harsh fluorescent lighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, it's such a blessing. It really is.
My dad, every day, suit, going to the office, coming home, weight of the world on his shoulders. And I was like, every day that I don't put on a tie, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, dude. I mean, first of all, finding a tie that fits my girthy neck is a hazard. So I'm super glad I don't have to do that, and that is my reminder to myself. Like, I kind of have a mission statement. If I've tried to boil it down as much as I can. I looked at like Facebook, and theirs is just like, do good or whatever. Like, it's like such a small thing, and I tried to get mine down as much as I can. And at this point, which I hope it's kind of ever changing, but it's create things I love with people I love. Like, if I could really boil it down, hopefully at the end of my life, I have a goal to play a stadium, but that goal is really to enjoy the process of a super big mountain. Like, can you pick up a mountain big enough and then really enjoy getting up every day, putting on the backpack and loving the people along the trail that you meet and come and go? That's at least what I'm trying to do. It's way harder than that, but I've kind of boiled it down to that much.
I really like that mission statement, and I'd like to take it for my own.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. What the other thing is, if you don't like the journey there, you're not going to like the destination. I mean, that seems to be a truth.
Right. Well, and I feel like you are a great person for people to hear that from, as a guy who so many people growing up in America would see, 9 seasons of How I Met Your Mother, the mountaintop, millions and millions of people knowing who you are, fame, like these things that we think are going to give us all the answers. And I've heard you in other places just say, like, I hope everybody gets that in their life, because they'll realize, like, these aren't the things that give us the things that we think we want.
And in fact, How I Met Your Mother, as dearly as I am grateful for that show, was one of my harder experiences.
Right.
And as a result of that, I developed a creative life philosophy that has served me really well. Now, I haven't been on a global hit TV show. I've done a bunch of TV shows since, but none of them have run 9 seasons and become this kind of cultural juggernaut. But at the same time, I don't think of those as any less impactful on my life. And in fact, a lot of them moved the needle for me creatively and spiritually a lot more than How I Met Your Mother did.
Right.
That said, what How I Met Your Mother allowed me to do was it allowed me the freedom to go look for, well, what makes you happy creatively? Like, what do you want to do? What kind of things do you want to work on? And not a lot of people get that. I mean, I do feel, there's a reason that, Da Vinci and Michelangelo and all those people had patrons, right? They had rich families that would just give them everything they needed so they could create art. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes look at How I Met Your Mother as my patron. Like, it allowed
That's beautiful.
it just allowed me to wake up every day and go, how do I want to be creative today?
Wow. I love that. What you're kind of talking about, like, that set the precedent for the stuff that you're doing now. Like, I almost want to broadcast, like, what does a life well lived moving forward look like? Like, what are some of your goals and dreams as a guy who's done so much? What does that look like? Is it more follow the light where it leads you, or are you like a 5-10 year plan kind of guy? Because you weirdly, as like spiritual, and I mean this in like such a fun way, like kind of like go with the flow mystic as you are, you also have done so much, and you obviously have a drive and like a want to get things done, if that's even the right way to say it. So I'm curious to know what that looks like for you.
Yeah, when in interviews, whenever anyone says like, "Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years?"
Mm-hmm.
I always refuse to answer that question, and this is why. Because if you asked me when I got out of NYU, out of the grad acting program at NYU, like, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? I think I would have come up with a much less interesting path than what actually happened.
Right.
Much less, much less successful in a weird way. Like I. The cosmos or my guardian angels or whoever the hell is guiding this, in addition to me, had something much more interesting, up its sleeve. So I try to be open to those twists and turns. Like, the thing that I really try to do is I try to listen to my body. Like, my body is actually really like a big tuning fork for a yes or a no. And sometimes a job offer or an opportunity will come by and it'll make me feel good in my body. Right? And then other times it seems like it's good, but something's off.
Yeah, you're a little shaky, or you can't sleep well. Dude,
Yeah,
I know
there's
that.
anxiety, there's nerves, and it's like your body telling you something that your mind hasn't processed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to listen to that. And I struggle with the idea, I struggle with having so many careers and so many outlets for expression, because I'm not just an actor. I'm most famous for being an actor,
Right.
but I'm really not just an actor. So to allow me space and time to do these other things, I have to not act as much.
Right.
I'm doing other things. And so when I take an acting role, it's because I'm really excited about it. But I have this is an ego worry. I'm not defending this. This is ego, where I feel like, well, I gotta get another hit TV show, or I'm gonna be that guy from How I Met Your Mother that no one, like, whatever happened to that guy,
Sure.
And so, but then it's like, I don't always like acting, like
yeah.
Sometimes I don't like doing it, and I love directing, and I love directing music videos, and I love writing essays, and I mean, there's just so many things. I really want to direct more movies. I feel like that's something I intuitively am quite good at. And I was going over, my girlfriend's working right now, and I was going over lines with her the other night, and I got real into the acting, and I was like, oh, I miss acting. I'm about to start Hunters, the show I did on Amazon. That's why I got this crazy beard.
Yeah, you are.
But we're starting that in a month, so I'm excited about that. It's just, to navigate what I really want to do, what I want to spend the hours of my day doing, mixed with the ego, the seduction of the ego, which says, you should probably do that. Like, I end up passing on things and then go, should I have done that? Like, but I didn't want to do it. So and no one knows what you've passed on. So you don't get credit for the things you got offered and you didn't do.
Right. Which we know these things, and you, in your brain, you're like, oh my gosh, I could have been blah, but nobody else would know that. I think
it ultimately doesn't matter. If you don't do it, you don't do it. But I'm trying to have a lifetime as a maker of things.
Yeah.
Like, absolute lifetime. And maybe never even retire. Like, just keep making things.
That is the goal.
Yeah. So in that, I've been a professional actor 21 years, and I've diversified and I do all these things. And I have this quiet belief that if I keep listening to my body, keep listening to my intuition, keep making what feels like wants to be made, whether it's a song or a movie or a play, I write plays too, that somehow I'll just have this really interesting life with interesting people.
Yeah. And honestly, like, again, why I've been so drawn to you and your story is like your willingness to try stuff is so fun to me. And because I just feel so like, I feel like we're kindred spirits in that I love the idea of just showing up and trying it on. And if it doesn't fit, you can leave it behind. Or if it doesn't fit, try again. And I love that you are writing songs at 40. It's so inspirational to me. As a guy, I have lots of creative aspirations, and I want to try different things. But I feel like I was told growing up, like, there's this window. And if you don't do it by, which like for me, I felt like it was like 25. And then you get there and you're like, oh, anybody that I really look up to is like actually in their 40s or like 50s who have lived this incredible life. And I actually don't judge them by, you know, their worst. We actually weirdly judge people by their greatest hits. And it's actually this beautiful human thing that we actually give people the benefit of the doubt, and we let them grow and change over time in the macro. Day to day, maybe not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I really love about just your and my origin story is like, you did something I really like, which is telling people when you love something. Mm-hmm. Like I really value that as like I like writing notes to people that when their work inspires me. Me too. Right. So you reached out, I reached back out, the stars aligned. I said, let's get together and let's try to write a song. And you were 100% like, yeah, man, let's do it. And we met for lunch. You had your guitar with you. Mm-hmm. You know, it just the whole thing. And then we started writing a song, and I was like, it was so easy and fun, and you were such a great hang that I'm kind of like, saying yes is always, not always. Sometimes you really have to say no if you get that weird spidey sense.
Right.
Like,
well, and that's back to your body too, because you can get to that point where you say yes, and then all of a sudden you're like tingling because you haven't slept in 40 hours. Like, oh yeah, I need to recharge.
Yeah. But there's something so great about those weird yeses, and you don't know why. Like, I didn't know why I was going to Nashville. Something in me was like, go to Nashville. And I ended up, I wrote with you, I wrote with Molly Tuttle, I wrote, I met this guy, Corey, who introduced me to this guy, Kyle Cox, and I'm writing songs with them all the time now. So there was something, I really needed to go there and just saturate myself in music. I got a killer guitar from Carter's there, you know. Like it really changed things for me, and it really helped. I connected with Audrey Assad, who's become a really good friend, who's an incredible musician, and so that ended up being a really impactful trip for me. And the only reason I went is because some little thing in me was like, go to Nashville.
Yeah, that's
wild.
I
had to go, and I went.
Well, I'm so glad you did, man. I'm so glad that we met and that we crossed paths, and I'm so glad that you came on today. I feel like the last part of the Why Are We Here, which I feel like if any of my guests are going to kind of stay in this zone, it's definitely you, which is the last part is like, why are we here in the universe, which is a huge question. So I like to just throw a couple things at you, see what sticks, see what like lights you up. I'll throw a couple at you. Like one of them was the mission statement, which we got into. I'm fascinated about like funerals and like death. Like nobody growing up, like I didn't really have a lot of people die, and I feel very lucky in that regard. But now as I'm getting older, like it's just so much more prominent. Something like COVID is really exposing like, oh yeah, we are fragile monkeys on this marble floating around space. And it's pretty wild. And I'm always wondering, as a human, like, what will my funeral look like? Who's going to be there? What is the impact? Like, is that anything that you ever think about, or does that resonate with you at all?
It's weird. I don't think about my funeral when I'm like old and gray. And maybe that's because it's hard to think of ourselves as older. But I sometimes have this very morbid thought, what if I died tomorrow? And what would be said or celebrated or forgotten? Would people find my writing that I think is pretty great? It's like the muse letters. Would someone like dust those off and say like, wait, hey, this, and that's a hard thing to think about, like legacy or what. And again, some of this is like, the ego wants to be celebrated and applauded and remembered and all. And
the kind of thing that's actually, as I've grown up and matured, like it actually has taken a lot off of my plate, back to that like body release of like, oh yeah, in a beautiful way. Not that I'm not here for a purpose, but I get to use both tools, which is this world was made for me and only me. So let's live a life that is so big and as yes forward as it can be. And also ashes to ashes, dust to dust. There's going to be a day where like it's all over and I don't have to put this weight on my shoulders to like leave this towering empire behind. That's not what's important. Like, how did you make people feel while you were here? that seems to be a little bit more
That
on
would be a
the
Buddhist
market.
thing. I put it in a song, but like the measure of a life is how much we loved and how much we let go.
Mm.
You know,
I just want to
and
soak in that.
I'm
Like,
not entirely convinced this is our only go around.
say more,
I'm
please.
open to the continuation of it in some form, whether it's, you know, energetically, or that we drop this body, we get another one. I don't know. I'm really open to some of that. I don't know that, you know, at the end of my life, if I'm going to want another body,
Yeah.
I might be a little tired.
Do I really want to like play the same game again? Like it's so
Yeah.
taxing. But I'm almost, you know, I grew up in a very traditional Christian. We talked about this the first time we hung out, like super traditional Christian upbringing. And as I've deconstructed, put things on and off the table, like something that not necessarily that I'm saying is a fact, but just something that's interesting to me in nature is like this recyclical nature of the universe, of this thing becomes this thing, gets eaten by this thing. It is almost too simple, and we almost want to complicate it, of the circle of life. Like it's like Lion King, like the antelope eats the grass, which was once another antelope. So it's kind of like the antelope's an antelope again. And it's this weird thing that just never stops thinging. So I could subscribe to that for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know, I don't know any artists who, like, even in, I don't know, in 500 years, is like Bob Dylan and the Beatles, are they going to be talking? Like, I don't know. And I don't know that it matters in a weird way. Like,
Yeah.
I think that in 500 years, music will still be altered by what Dylan and the Beatles did in the 20th century in some form.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I don't know that, you know, there are people that you and I will never know, never hear about, that are the kindest, most giving, loving, that it altered so many people that we don't even know about. And they will die, and we will never know their names. But I feel sometimes they're like celebrated in the heavenly realms, you know, like just like that was a life well lived. And then there's other people we might know because they're wildly famous in their time. They're not kind, they're not good, they're not good. I don't like that word, but they're not. They lived a life that was more about service to self.
Sure.
And we all know who those people are, and it shows our own value system collectively that those are the people we choose to venerate and hold up and spend our time talking about. But I just think that if you had, it was gun to head, would you know, you asked me, do you want to be wildly famous but kind of live a life of less spiritual consequence, or do you want to be less well known but live a really rich, spiritually connected, compassionate and forgiving life? I hope I would take the latter. You know?
Yeah, as do I. And I think as I'm getting older, as I'm maturing, as I'm going on this spiritual journey that I'm going on, I'm trying to remember that, like, podcasts, TikTok, all these things, they have a big reach, but is the impact, the depth of that reach as strong? And who are the people in my life that are on a day-to-day basis that I can affect? Like, my mom always used the, I don't know if you're familiar with like the parable of like the kid and the starfish. They're walking on the beach. There's tons of starfish all over the place that are washed up. And the mom just looks and like, well, I can't really do anything. And the kid is throwing them back one by one. She's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, well, for that starfish, it changed everything. And it's not about worrying about the entire world or all the starfish. Sometimes it is, what can I do today to touch the people in my immediate life? I'm so trying to be better at that, because I'll go a week of like, what did I actually, or rather, who did I actually impact and show love to and show forgiveness to? And then the worst part is that I forget about myself, which is the silliest thing that you can do, is neglect your own, you know, like, being a human's hard. Like, I got to give myself some grace sometimes.
I know. And I really wish more people would say that. I wish that was just like a phrase.
I wish every conversation had to start with like, hey, what's up, man? Obviously being a human's super hard. And so like, we're going to give each other grace in this conversation. So how you been? How's your mom?
Yeah. Or like, how are you? It's like, I'll tell you, being human's hard.
Yeah.
I'm having a pretty good day today, but being human's hard.
Today's great. Yeah. That was kind of your latest newsletter that I read today is like kind of almost like allowing yourself or giving yourself permission to like feel happy, which is something that like I hadn't even really thought about because I'm terrible at it. Like Jeff, again, my manager who's in the room, we did our first podcast interview yesterday. We get done and he brought champagne to like celebrate. And I was like, oh yeah, you could celebrate stuff that you're excited about. That's a thing too. It doesn't have to be when it's, accepting an award for something. Sometimes you can actually just be proud of yourself for starting the thing or for, hey, let's just take the first step. Oh, nice. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah. And again, if you can't celebrate the first podcast, you're not going to celebrate winning the Podcaster of the Year award.
Right. Yeah. Which, we'll definitely be up for this year.
I hope so. And I'm intending to be there with you.
Yeah. Dude, I can't wait. Obviously, when all this nonsense is done and you're back in Nashville, we'll have to get together and hang and write all the songs, or I'll have to come out to LA. You're in LA, right? Right now?
LA, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan, and the weather is just
perfect. Can't be beat. It's so beautiful today. So
yeah, man. Well, I think this is a great place to wrap it up. I will be respectful of your time with the pup and the GF. I just really want to say again, thank you so much. You are a breath of fresh air every time you're on my Instagram. Your brand new debut EP, One More and Then I'll Go, is fantastic. And what's that?
One more, then I'll let you go.
Then I'll let you go. I wrote it down wrong. I swear to God I listened to it. But The High Road is my jam, and I was listening to it on the way here. And so anybody listening to this, please go check that out. Follow Josh on all the socials, all the things. And one more time, man, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Great to reconnect.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, man. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's another episode of Why Are We Here? That one was super fun. Josh is obviously just the best. He's a great human, and we really enjoyed having him on. Make sure to go check out his music. Anywhere that you listen to music, just search Josh Radnor. Guys, I'm loving doing this podcast. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Comment down below any guests that you want us to have on, and we'll see you next week. Why are we here?